Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he joins me now. Senator, thank you for taking the time to be with us. You have heard the story. You've heard Alito's response. Your initial reaction?
My reaction is there is absolutely no way that Justice Alito can sit in judgment on the two cases where Donald Trump's interests and the insurrection itself is directly involved. He has disgracefully and shamefully displayed the flag in utter disrespect, but even more, he has shown his bias when it comes to those cases. In another era, there would be absolutely no question about the need to question his resignation, but this court has been so disrespectful of basic standards of decency that it may well kind of be taken for granted. But here is the simple truth. He owes the American people and the Congress an explanation. It may well be there needs to be a hearing about how this kind of disrespectful display of the flag occurred, and without question, he needs to recuse himself from those cases, step aside on all the cases that involve Donald Trump.
Can I ask you, Senator, do you have a sense of the pressure points that would actually get Alito or Thomas to recuse themselves?
The pressure point is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And it's now time for Justice Roberts to lead, to demonstrate spine and backbone, to call for his colleague to step aside from these cases, and it ought to apply probably to Justice Thomas as well. That's one pressure point. Another one is my Republican colleagues ought to be joining in calling for a code of ethics, not the set of vague rules and principles that the court has articulated, but a really enforceable code of ethics with teeth that would apply to this kind of disrespectful, indecent behavior. And third, we need an inspector general for the judicial branch, as well as most particularly for the Supreme Court. I'm very clear-eyed about the likelihood of any of those measures taking place in Congress because Republicans have simply abandoned their sense of ethical standards. And I think we have to put the Supreme Court and the judiciary on the ballot as an issue going into these coming elections and really tell the American people they have a choice to make between candidates who say they're going to stand up for ethical conduct and others who try to walk away from it.
Senator, I hear you on the ballot box. At the same time, I do wonder if the Senate Judiciary Committee should investigate any of these claims.
I believe we should. I think we should investigate Justice Thomas's violations of basic standards of ethics. And I think that Justice Alito has committed very similar actions. And this latest is just one more that cries out for accountability. Remember, the Supreme Court consists of 9 members of a judicial branch that is seemingly above the law. The highest court in the land has the lowest or no real enforceable standards of ethics. And the only way to hold them accountable to the minimal standards of conduct are to have a hearing in the judiciary. And I think it's the Judiciary Committee that ought to be doing it.
Listen, anyone who cares about democracy ought to care about this institution, and yet I appreciate and understand that this can all seem a little esoteric to some folks in the context of the decisions that the court is going to be making just in the next few weeks, months. Can you explain to American voters why this matters?
What matters is that the United States Supreme Court is slow-walking a decision that is critical to the prosecution of Donald Trump in federal court. Second, it will soon decide cases that are critical legally to the key questions at stake in the prosecution of the January 6th insurrectionists, whether they can be held accountable under a particular federal statute that could also be applied to Donald Trump. And second, whether Donald Trump should be given blanket immunity for almost anything he did, which is what he argues, as president or in the days afterward during the insurrection. Those are the two key legal issues that it will decide with direct bearing on Donald Trump. Cut it through all of the legal niceties and technicalities. This Supreme Court will answer to no one for those decisions. Two members of this court, and maybe more, have demonstrated their bias. And that is exactly why they need to step aside, Justices Thomas and Alito. And there's one more point here, which is that, you know, the Supreme Court is taking down, through these self-inflicted wounds, not just the fairness in individual cases, but the institution itself. The Supreme Court has no armies or police force to enforce its orders or rulings. It has only the trust and credibility of the American people, which it is destroying. Its approvals are plummeting, and with good reason, because it has squandered its trust.
Senator Richard Blumenthal. Senator, thank you so much for being with us. For more, let's talk with Melissa Murray. She's a professor of constitutional law at New York University. She also clerked for Justice Sonia Sotomayor when she was on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. And she is the co-host of the Strict Scrutiny podcast. And I have the benefit of seeing you in my peripheral vision as the senator is talking. So your thoughts on what you just heard?
Yeah, I think the senator is exactly right. Obviously, there needs to be accountability here. There has needed to be accountability for some time, but the accountability has to come from the court. And this is a court that, you know, in Bravo TV terms, is basically like, who gonna check me, boo? Nobody. Nobody's going to check this court. This court is on its own steam, high on its own supply, and it's doing what it wants. And, I mean, Justice Alito basically told us where his political allegiances lie. Like, he and his wife were apparently so perturbed by this anti-Trump display that they felt free to fly the American flag upside down. I mean, that by itself, I think, is notable. If you didn't know for the past 8 years where Justice Alito was on the political spectrum, now you know. He's very firmly in the Trump camp. So is his wife. And they're flying the flag upside down, the symbol of Stop the Steal. And his statement to the press did not dispute any of this. He didn't say, like, I didn't fly the flag. He didn't say, I don't know what it means to fly a flag upside down. Instead, he's just like, we did it to own the libs, or rather, my wife did it to own the libs, which raises a whole separate set of questions. Justice Alito is the author of the Dobbs opinion, which withdrew the right to an abortion from millions of women in America. For someone who is so intent on controlling American women, Justice Thomas and Justice Alito seem to have no responsibility for controlling what their wives do on their own time. And again, it's not a feminist message I'm trying to send here, but before you come at everyone else's cervix, maybe get your own house in order. This is an optical disaster for you, for the court. If this is your wife's doing, maybe she shouldn't be doing it.
One of the things, just to pick up on the fact, you know, as you said, that this was the message that they came forward with, right? Yeah. So there's the response. The Times has the reporting. They respond to Times.
This is a terrible response, FYI.
But then they go a step further with Fox News. So this was Fox News anchor Shannon Bream, who apparently was told by Justice Alito, he told me a neighbor on their street had an F Trump sign that was within 50 feet of where children await the school bus in January 21. Mrs. Alito brought this up with the neighbor, which at the time, it seems Fairfax schools were remote, so there weren't likely no children on buses. But the fact that he chooses to go to a conservative media outlet to expand his story. This is not the first time he's done this.
No, this is not the first time he has gone to a conservative media outlet. He's been to the Wall Street Journal many times to state his views that the organized bar doesn't defend the Supreme Court enough, all of this. I mean, he's done this before. But the idea that you are so disgruntled with your neighbor's decision to display a sign, however vulgar, that your response is to fly the United States flag upside down in violation of the U.S. flag code is a real choice. I mean, if that's how you're owning the libs, you know, I guess.
So let me ask you this, because you clerked for Justice Sotomayor before she was Justice Sotomayor. If Justice Sotomayor had ever flown the American flag in any manner other than it was intended outside,
she would be living in Guantanamo Bay right now. But I can do one better than that, Alicia. Today is May 17th. It is the 70th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, which was argued by Thurgood Marshall, who became the first African-American to sit on the United States Supreme Court. He occupied the chair that Justice Clarence Thomas now sits in. When Justice Marshall and his wife Cecilia came to D.C. when he took his role on the court. They were very careful. They didn't socialize with the people that they had socialized before, and they were very social people. But Mrs. Marshall understood that she could not do the things that she had done before, that her husband's position made it so important for them to maintain this patina of complete neutrality that they had to basically sequester themselves. And they didn't lead very exciting social lives. They were pretty much reclusive in D.C. once he took that spot because she knew he had to be above reproach. Where is that same concern on this court for being above reproach? Like, you would never see it from any of these liberal justices. You wouldn't have seen it from Thurgood Marshall. But all you do is see it from these Republican justices who can't seem to stop being insurrection forward.